Today I wanted to do a video blog entry versus a normal one. I thought it'd be fun to show a problem I ran across and show you on the screen how some solutions I have for it. This is Unity. It's a great game engine. It's very graphical. It's quite popular. Came out of Denmark a while ago. It's a great way to make games. It's less intimidating than other tools. It has a fun WYSIWYG Adobe kind of feel to it. I really enjoy working with it. Part of making a game is making the UI. So over here I have like a sample UI of some panels and some buttons that might be in a game. And I approached this as I would kind of a web page or like a Flash, if you guys remember Adobe Flash, Macromedia Flash, of how I want to make a UI. I want to have elements that I reuse. So here I have kind of a structure here of a tree with a modal panel and some buttons and some other panels. So what I've done in the past is I have a bunch of buttons, but they all inherit from one button. So they're styled once and used throughout. So in Flash I'd have a library and then I'd modify a library element, which is their idea of libraries and assets. And then all of those instances in my stage would update. So the problem with Unity is they have these things called prefabs. So I've created one here called button. And these buttons are associated with it. So this is how you associate with the prefab. So now this guy is a button prefab that can be used. I can drag and drop it and use it throughout the application, which is great. And if I make changes to it, like let's say I made the size of the font a little smaller, you'll notice that when I hit apply, that will happen to all instances of it. So now if I come into these buttons, you'll notice that they are now 30 versus 32. It was a very subtle change. Let me do a larger change to change it to 15. And then if you look here, and if I come here and I hit apply, they got smaller. Now let's take it back to 30. So a pretty basic concept of having an object that can be updated and all of its instances get changed. The problem is in Unity that you can't put these inside. You can't put these objects inside of objects. I'll show you how it breaks down. So if I create another prefab here for the panel, so maybe I want to reuse a panel. I want this panel to be used. I might have 100 panels in a game. So I create an empty prefab. I drag the panel into it. And then now this has become a prefab. And the problem is it loses the linkage of the button. So now, for example, this panel is now here and it contains other prefabs. Well, let me go back and edit my prefab and you'd expect the change to propagate. So I'll take this guy back down to 15. I'll hit apply and you'll notice that they haven't changed. They're no longer linked together. The linkage is broken. So this doesn't really work for me. It'd be nice for Unity to fix that because then I could use more of a Flash approach. Another approach would be to write a script to style things for you. I've done this in the past. I did this at Anki when I was working on the Unity stuff there. I made a little script that would apply itself to whatever object it was attached. So I have it here called Style Setter, and it's a pretty basic C# script. I'll try to just tell you what it does. So it's basically got an enumeration of different styles, and then it goes through and determines which style has been selected. Let me show you how that works. So if I come here to one of my buttons and the text element that I want to style, I could add a component. I could I'll call it Style Setter. And now this Style Setter is associated with this game object, which has a text box. So you'll notice that a pull down appears from my enumeration where I have as many styles as I'd want. I'd probably keep a default one, maybe make one called My Style 1. And now if we go back to the script, what's going to happen is when the game runs, it's going to notice that I set the member variable to My Style 1. It's going to grab the text box. And it's going to go through and say, hey, which style is set? And if it determines the default is, it'll make, I said bold. And if it was My Style 2, it would make it italic. So it's a way to kind of through code get around this way of setting styles. It works. You can apply these. Problem I have with it is it's not native. It's something that probably have to be babysat, as Unity updates itself and things change. You could break compatibility. It's performance-wise, it's not going to be as fast as if Unity did something native, but it is a solution that can work to kind of have this global style system of way to apply things across your application or your game. Just feels a little kludgy, and a native approach of something might be a little cooler. But seeing this problem made me think of even a cooler way to fix this. Wouldn't it be great to have a different way to style things? So you have all these parameters on this object, and I immediately went to, why not use like a cascading style sheet like websites do? So how would you do that? So forget about the prefabs. How about if I just am allowed to assign properties to all these from a CSS file? Let's take a look at what that could look like. So I'll come over to Photoshop, where I've done a mock-up. So here's the screen we were looking at. I have the parameters here. They can be set to this instance of this button on the stage, and you can have different buttons have different settings on the stage of each instance, or they can be derived from the prefab that they're associated with. So here's the idea of how we could apply a CSS kind of approach to this. Let's say down here we had the option where we could create a CSS file. So you right click, hit create, and there'd be a new choice for a CSS style sheet. And after you click that, you would have a style sheet in whatever folder you would want. When you created these, they would become available for your entire project. So you could have as many as you'd want. So how would you work with these? So after you've created it, you'd have a new UI element on each one of these objects, each one of these, I believe these are called objects. So you have one that's a text, one's a transform. So these are all game objects. So each one of these would get a new tab where you could associate a CSS file with it. So if you click this tab, you would get a browser, much like you do for other game objects, where you could pick the different CSS files that you've associated with this project, or ones that are in the scene. So here, let's say you have two. So maybe you would pick mygame.css. This would change state to show that this object is now being derived from the CSS file. So all of these elements would pull their values from the CSS file. Let's take a look at what those CSS files could look like. They could be very simple. So we could use a common format that people are familiar with that are do websites. So for example, here we could have a couple styles. And we could have the font weight, font style, and we could have like a default one. And we could have as many as we want. And we could use the same cascading style sheet systems that exist for the web, different types of an inheritance, different files for different things. It could be very powerful. We could even go further. So this is applying to all of these, and someone would have to be custom to Unity because there wouldn't be a CSS equivalent to them. But I think it could be pulled off. So these would all be applied by this guy here. But how about if we even went further and we allowed every single setting to be tied to a CSS file? So what we get is the very familiar little target symbol, which allows you to connect things in Unity. I was thinking it'd work over here versus it's kind of busy over here, and there are already some, so there'd be some confusion of this target is targeting this. This would be very clear that you're targeting a CSS file for all of these. And you can see that could work across a transform and all the way down through here. You'd get the same select screen when you tapped one of these, and then it would let you know that it's been associated. So now font size would get a different color to kind of let you know that it has a setting. I don't want to use bold because bold already means that it's associated with a prefab, so I was thinking maybe color would be nice. And the little target symbol could change to let you know that it's been set. Well, how would things look for one of these more advanced game objects like a rect transform. Well, let's look at another CSS file. By just going with the style that CSS has put forward, you could easily set any kind of properties. Like here would be the clip for the top. It's just a rect, which already exists in CSS, so it would just follow the rect format from CSS. And then the rest of these are vectors. So these would be vector 2s and these would be vector 3s. So we could set floats for all those vectors. And I think it would work really well. This is something I would love to have, is this ability to have everything derived from a CSS file. I think it'd be a really clean way as your projects grow in complexity to globally set things. One other thing I forgot to point out is when you do associate, you maybe want to dim this to let you know that it's being pulled from here. Give it a different treatment so that you kind of understand what's happening there, that it's getting its value from this target here. So I think it'd be a great system as far as like being extensible across a large project. And I feel all the properties across even 2D GUI elements all the way to 3D could be derived from a CSS file. And it also would allow you to change things globally in a way. And it also would play very friendly with check-in systems like GitHub, because basically you're just making changes to a text file that can be diffed against whatever system you use. So it's something I hope to see Unity think about and consider. I'd love to have CSS, because I do feel that game UI is getting closer and closer to HTML. It's evolving away from being in a game engine. It's getting closer. Like I feel the new Unity GUI system is a lot like HTML tables, and they're just getting one step closer to just being more of an HTML based layout system to make game UI. Love to get your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.